Greetings and konnichiwa, and welcome to the Onyx Tavern. This is your host, the Barkeep, bringing you podcast 75 here at the Tavern, presented by Hirotaku.com. Well, guys, a couple of months ago, we here at the Tavern brought you the breaking news that in 2015, Power Rangers the next series of Power Rangers would be Power Rangers Dino Charge, and then of course eventually Power Rangers Dino Supercharge, and that they are adapting the footage from Kyoryuger. Now the odd thing about this, and we brought this up, and anybody who knows Sentai and Power Rangers knows what the elephant in the room here is. And that is that instead of adapting the next Sentai after Gokaiger, in this case Go Buster has been completely skipped over in favor of Kyoryuger. Meaning that for the time being, we are not getting a Power Rangers adaptation of Go Buster. Now, when the news had broke, and what I've heard in the last couple of months is everybody, first of all, seems to be really excited about Dino Charge because Kyoryuger seems to be rather popular. But for whatever reason, I'm not seeing any severely negative backlash for Go Buster not being adapted. Some people are like, yeah, well, they didn't go in order, and they've always gone in order. Why are they skipping a Sentai? They've never done that before. And all these different arguments are coming into play. And what I just find curious about the whole thing is a lot of people are not overly upset that Go Buster is not being adapted into a Power Rangers series, or at least not yet as we know. And what I really want to go ahead and cover with you all today is just the idea of why exactly was Go Buster not adapted, and it's going to be really speculation on my part, and two, why are people not as upset as, and frankly they really should be, that they skipped a Sentai they've never done it before, and essentially they're singling out Go Buster of all the Sentais that have come before it. So let's go ahead and talk about that a little bit of detail, and I want to go kind of into where Go Buster fits in Sentai, basically where it came from, and what influence it has now on Sentai, because I'm going to be completely honest. It is my opinion that what happened with Go Buster influenced Kyoryuger and what it decided to do, and it influenced Tokyuger and what it is decided to do. And I'll get more into that as we go along. But first we have to really start at Gokaiger. Now, love it or hate it, I think we all agree and have to admit that Gokaiger is one of the most, if not the most popular Sentai since Jetman. It was insanely crazy in Japan, insanely crazy here in the United States, had high toy sales over there. I know a lot of people here are collecting them. I'm still trying to get a hold of a lot of the Ranger keys myself. The story was really good. We had characters were really good. I think overall it's a good series. And I've already discussed my thoughts on Gokaiger previously, but it was a good series. Let's just say what it is. That's exactly what Gokaiger was. Now, because of the popularity of Gokaiger, I think what happened is that the team behind Sentai wanted to try something different because they had credibility. They're like, okay, so Shinkanger was very popular, Gokaiger maybe not as much, but everybody loved Gokaiger. Let's try something different. After 35 years, let's try something a little bit different. And they did. What they developed with Go Buster was a series that visually looked different from all previous Sentai, had mecha that were significantly different from previous Sentai as well. A darker, grittier storyline, I think, than previous Sentai that had come before it. You could probably make arguments there, but I think the tone of the series originally was set to be a little bit darker. I think overall, when we look at Go Buster is trying to be the antithesis of Gokaiger. And here's what I mean. Gokaiger had tons of Zords, they had simple stories, it was a lot more fun. What Go Buster I think strived to be is what we all look at when we look at movie reboots. They're darker, they're grittier. And I guess if I had to go ahead and put it in this context, Gokaiger was the 87 Ninja Turtles, whereas Go Buster was the 2012 current incarnation. I may be wrong on that, but I at least like to think the new Ninja Turtles on Nickelodeon is a little bit darker than what the '87 cartoon was achieving. That being said, I think that was their overall goals. They were trying different things because just about everything in Gokaiger Go Buster was different than what had come before it. And I think that's where the first problem comes in. Because the thing about Go Buster, I think people kind of had a problem with is, first of all, the look. They got the colored visors, they got the pleather suits, yada yada, all that kind of stuff. The Zords, again, were not the same. They were a little bit more complex. They were not as simplistic. And the stories they were telling, let's be honest, the whole story, at least in the first half, and I'll get into the thoughts here in a minute, was a lot darker than anything that had come before it, at least in recent years. Maybe since Gokaiger, because I think that had kind of a dark storyline. The idea, I think, is that Gokaiger and previous Sentai kind of took themselves lighthearted. It was a little bit more fun, but Go Buster strived to be darker, grittier, a little bit more serious. And I commend the creative team for doing that, because when you have 35 seasons of a show, you do need to try something different every now and then. Some people may agree with that and some may not, but if you get into a routine, you become monotonous, then you get stuff like Gokaiger. For all the things it did right, it felt like a generic Sentai series. So they tried to go darker with the Go Buster theme, and I think they succeeded. I think the plot with the parents disappearing, the angst that our characters went ahead and felt, the villains definitely with enter and escape a little bit, I think that all worked well. Now, for whatever reason, and I'm going to speak strictly from what I'm told of Japan, the Japanese audience did not take to that very well. For what reason, I don't know. Maybe they like something a little bit more lighthearted, something that's not as dark and all that. The toy sales over there plummeted from what they had from Gokaiger. Essentially, what Go Buster incited within the series was that it pretty much started to tank. People did not respond well to that. And when you actually look at Go Buster as a whole, by the end of the series, what happens is that halfway through, they start changing things up a lot. The stories are a little bit more lighthearted. Things are not as dark and as brooding. They introduce this Messiah card plot. Things become a lot lighter, and things are not as heavy as they were before. But Go Buster kind of suffered because of that. And the series was not really well received. And up to that point, it had the lowest ratings since O-Ranger within a Sentai series. Now, what happened? Let's look at what happened after Go Buster. They tried something dark. They tried something different. So what they do at Kyoryuger? They went right back to formula. Now, what do I mean by formula? What has kind of made Sentai successful? What are the things that you think of? You think of full rubber-suited villains, no human counterparts. We got that in Kyoryuger. We got a full team with one female member. That is typically the trend that has happened in Sentai, and we got that. We got bright, colorful uniforms. We got tons and tons of Zords and collectible devices, such as the batteries. That came into play. And the plots went back to being a little bit more simplistic, a little bit more silly. I mean, look at Canderel and all her plots to make people happy, the singing, the joking. So basically what happens, they go from Gokaiger being the light, happy Sentai it is, go to something dark and brooding, and when that didn't work, they went right back to what people supposedly wanted, which was the lighter-hearted Sentai. And that is continuing even now into Kyoryuger, because look at what they have. Bright and colorful costumes, the brightest I've seen in the longest time, relatively simple plots, tons of things to go ahead and collect, tons of new Zords being introduced in all the new episodes now. So what they have done essentially since Go Busters, they've gone back to the simpler Sentai. For some reason, Japanese audiences were not gravitating towards the darker grittier, and I will say in some contexts more realistic Sentai that they were presenting over there. And, I guess it's a matter of taste. Again, I don't know what the Japanese were thinking at that point, but a lot of the criticisms that I hear about Sentai from the American point of view, at least, is sometimes it is too silly, it is too ridiculous, and unfortunately some of that spills over in the Power Rangers. Case in point, look at Kyoryuger, which, let's actually look at some history here. O-Ranger was in the same vein as Go Buster. They tried something dark, a little bit more serious. That didn't work, almost canceled the series. And then comes Kyoryuger, which was a lot more lighthearted, a lot more fun. But I do want to point out real quick that as far as ratings are concerned, Kyoryuger's ratings were lower than Go Buster. But the equalizing factor here, which makes Kyoryuger more successful, I think, in a lot of people's eyes, is that the toy sales were higher. They were able to sell more stuff, basically. Which, of course, it's going to be higher because you have those collectible batteries, which is something Go Buster did not have. But if we're looking as far as ratings are concerned, then Go Buster actually did better than Kyoryuger. As far as Kyoryuger, we have to kind of wait and see until that series ends before we can make a judgment on that. But where am I going with all this? I know I keep kind of rambling on about it. Go Buster tried something different that did not work for the Japanese audience. So they decided to go a little bit more, I guess kiddie is a very simplistic term to go ahead and use. But that's essentially what happened. Now, what factors about anything that I said about Go Buster would make people at Saban not want to adapt it into a Power Rangers series? Now let's throw out the toy argument here, because first of all, we all know, it's been well documented, at least on my side, that the Bandai of America is not producing the same toys. So if they think that the toy sales were bad and they did adapt Go Buster, they would have created pieces of crap anyway for us. So I'm going to throw that argument out there because even if the toy sales in Japan were bad, they would have made something over here in America to compensate for that. Whatever that is, the damn Zord Builder system, re-releasing old figures or whatever. They would have done something to equalize that out. Some would go ahead and probably point out the ratings, but as stated, the Japanese audience is different than American audiences. Just because the Japanese audience didn't like it doesn't necessarily mean that the American audience wouldn't like it. So what is it about Go Buster that's unappealing? I mean, you got the Zords, and the Zords, I'm going to be honest, are pretty cool. Yeah, it's a giant rabbit, and a gorilla, and a couple of beetles and stuff. But you got a Megazord that rides another Megazord as a motorcycle. I mean, I think that's pretty cool. We have 5 core Rangers. Well, I mean, technically we have 3 to begin with, and we get 2 more later. Yes, there's only 1 female on the team, but as we've seen in shows like Ninja Storm, having 1 female is not necessarily a disadvantage to that show. Neither am Dino Thunder. And of course, you can always come with secondary characters. So I don't think the female dynamic was an issue here. The fact that the costumes were pleather instead of spandex. Well, look at Time Force. You know, they had the colored visors. Their suits were different. Heck, I remember when Gokaiger first came out, people were flipping their lids going, why are there no belts on the Gokaiger? But what that turned out to be a pretty good series, and Jungle Fury was semi-decent, I think, as a Power Ranger adaptation. So it really can't be the suits, I think. The dark storyline, well, as we've seen, we're able to take dark storylines and make them lighthearted storylines here in Power Rangers, or vice versa. Take lighthearted in Gokaiger and turn it into a dark storyline, or excuse me, air quotes, dark storyline in RPM. So it can't even be the story. I'm really at a loss for why they thought that Kyoryuger would be more viable. Now, as we stated about the toys, everybody's like, well, they're making more toys for Kyoryuger. While that is true, we've already seen promos and previews of what the Dino Charge toys are going to look like. As expected, they're nothing like their Japanese counterparts. So again, it can't be the fact that Saban saw that you can make more toys with dinosaurs. Yes, we have upcoming films like Jurassic World and all that, but I think, as Raptor and I stated in a previous video, dinosaurs have been consistently popular for the last 20, 30 years. So I don't necessarily think that it's the dinosaur theme that does it. You know, I don't really know why they wouldn't go ahead and wouldn't adapt Go Buster. I can't think of a single reason that would keep them off the radar. Because you got plenty of footage to go ahead and work with. You can always shoot new footage if you feel that there's not enough, and you can always come up with any plot that you want. And let's go to Amit Bhawmik, who I did read on his website, and I would highly suggest go check it out, where he had his idea for a Power Rangers Go Buster adaptation, where it is essentially they're on Marinoi fighting Venjix. I mean, that's the gist of it, but that sounds like a pretty cool idea. And further, hey, they have Power Rangers Go Buster over in Korea right now. That's the show that's on. That they were able to go ahead and adapt it, and as far as I can tell, that's successful as well. Ever since they started adapting Power Rangers over in Korea, I've heard nothing but good things from the Korean audiences, or at least through my sources anyway. So you have a series that is successful in Korea, not successful in Japan, and they're not even going to try it in the United States. And again, I just don't know what exactly it is that they're trying to, keep us away from or not bother adapting. And of course, the other issue that I want to go ahead and bring up is people don't seem to really care. Because when I first found out about it, I heard, there were people saying, oh, why they skip a Sentai, they've not done it before and stuff. But now everybody's really excited about Dino Charge because a lot of people liked Kyoryuger. So are they saying they don't want to see Go Buster? I mean, are they not upset about the whole thing? I really don't know what the mood is from a lot of people. Because, well, first of all, the benefit of skipping Go Buster is that we finally get to catch up and don't have to wait 2-3 years in some cases to get adaptations of Sentai that we can go back to immediately after they're done. Because I'm going to be honest, this kind of dragging it out for 2 years thing, 20 episodes for a year and then another 20 episodes, that's getting a little monotonous. I'm hoping they might change that and kind of catch up a little bit quicker to what's going on there. But I mean, I'm a little upset they're not adapting Go Buster because I really, again, for the first half, I liked what they were doing with it. I liked the Zords. I liked the different things that they had with it. But it just seems to me that they're excluding the Go Buster characters because of what Japanese audiences thought of it. Now, when was the last time Saban actually gave a damn about what the fans of either Sentai or Power Rangers think? Because as, again, pre-established, they were doing a lot of things with this Mega War. It's not making sense. They did a lot of things with Samurai that's not making sense. And you even go back to Disney and what they did with the franchise. I mean, the golden era of Power Rangers has long passed, and now it's kind of up to the point where they're doing things without really understanding, I think, their consequences. And sure, yeah, I'm sure it's some discussion they had, like, well, what happens if we skip Go Buster and all that? And they're like, people won't care because it wasn't popular in Japan. I guess that's probably what they went ahead and said, but I don't necessarily understand why that decision is being made. And I guess it's an open question that I have to everybody out here. I mean, again, is it the fact that it was low ratings and they thought, hey, maybe people in America won't like it? But again, if they are really going towards little kids at this point, which is what they say they're doing, okay, what little kid would not like Go Buster? Yes, I get it, dinosaurs, but there's no reason you can't have Go Buster. I mean, it's still pretty cool, I think. And heck, everybody's biggest issue about Kyoryuger, no Yellow Ranger. So I seem to be talking in circles right here. I really wish Raptor was here to bounce some stuff off of me. It's hard going solo, I will go ahead and admit that. But ultimately, I think here's what I'm trying to get at. Go Buster did not do well because they tried something different and it failed. They're going back to formula, which, in the long run, I think is kind of sad for Sentai that their audience doesn't like new things. Because unfortunately, if you keep the same thing over and over and over again, it becomes monotonous, it becomes bad, and all that. So I have to criticize the Japanese fans just a little here for they gave you something new to test out, and you hated it so much that they've gone back to giving us what I feel is kind of less in storytelling and more in marketing and more in trying to sell us stuff. So the blame, I have to admit, the blame has to go to the Japanese audiences at some point right here. That also being said, did Saban go ahead and look at it and say, hey, if the Japanese audience turned against it, it makes me wonder if Go Buster was the most successful Sentai and had more people watching it than Gokaiger, which, to be honest, it's hard to live up to what Gokaiger had. But if it was that popular, would Saban even consider, oh yeah, this is the most popular Sentai to date, let's go ahead and show it? So it's a number of different elements, I think, questions that I cannot answer here today. But I wanted to really kind of start a discussion about it because I think Go Buster is a good program, and I love the fact that they tried something different. And I wish they was if they really was stuck with that gritty, dark tone throughout the entire season, then yeah, I think it would have been more successful. But I will say, give credit to the Sentai creators at this point, because halfway through the season, they did change things. They did make things a little bit more lighthearted, because obviously that's what the fans were asking. And that's what, it's a fine line between what the fans want and what story you're trying to go ahead and tell. So again, I commend them for listening to their fans, something that Saban doesn't necessarily do, unless you're buying something. But also, I think they kind of gave in to peer pressure a little bit, that they didn't. Go Buster was not the story they necessarily wanted to tell, at least in the second half. That the story they wanted to tell, I think, ended when they defeated Messiah, and then they had to come up with something new. So that's basically, I think, what happened there. Nevertheless, I'm really curious as to what you guys think about this, and I would love to get an official explanation from Saban at some point. And as we've speculated here in the tavern before, maybe the Go Busters will come back in a movie as a miniseries. They will be adapted in the comics, or they might be like the equivalent of the Alien Rangers to the Dino Charge universe. So, or excuse me, the continuation of Power Rangers in the Dino Charge format. So I caught myself there. Apologize. But tell me what you guys think. Did you love Go Buster? Did you hate it? Why do you think they are skipping it? Is it ratings and merchandise, or is it that Saban just doesn't feel they can do anything with the footage and what they're trying to go ahead and achieve? So let me know, guys. Definitely leave some comments right here. But I want to thank you all for listening to me ramble once again. You guys have a good evening, and the tavern is now closed.